Shalom. We are still in Parasha Jethro, that has to do with Yahweh's abundance. Now, I want to zoom out today just to put things in context regarding the main event that's happening in this Torah portion, and that is the receiving of the 10 words. Now, I'm specifically calling it 10 words because that's the first mountain experience that Israel received, and then later on they received the tablets, which is basically the 10 commandments. The 10 words, 10 commandments are the same thing but expressed through different mediums. Now, we discussed this before. Now, why is it important for the commandments? What is the context of Yahweh giving the commandments? Why is it needed for Israel to receive the commandments at this point in time? Now, when you read the storyline, since they left Egypt, crossed the Red Sea, went through the wilderness, and entered the foot of the mountain, it is month 3, the third month. So they basically newborn spiritual babies who just came to faith. And they are a mixed multitude of approximately maybe 6 million people. I don't know, 3 million people. There's some speculation of how many people there are. If you can think for yourself, if you have a large group of people with different cultures, different ways, there's a mixed multitude. Imagine the infighting, the conflicts, and the things that result because of that. And that's basically the starting point of the Torah portion, where Jethro advised Moshe how to deal with the people, because he was constantly talking to people every single day, sorting things out, explaining to them Yahweh, explaining to them the statutes, the Moedim or the Sabbath or whatever, the cycles involved, and also the Torah, the commandments that was revealed at that stage, at that point in time. So the commandments are there to bring structure and order. Now, words is the Hebrew word dabar or davar. Now, devarim is the word for wilderness. And then you get the other meaning for davar. It means honeybee, or honeybee is related to the word davar, and related to the word davarim, that's wilderness, and that's related to words. So what have the three things in common? First of all, words, that's the medium that contains information. Wilderness, that is the place, that is the environment that makes the words efficient. So the context of the wilderness emphasize the words, and the words are now more important in context of the wilderness, where the flesh is challenged, make you uncomfortable, and where you will receive the words that will change you internally. And then lastly, honeybee has to do with structure. If you look at how honeybees are constructed their honeycomb, it is patterns of the same kind, providing structure so that they can procreate and exist and multiply. So the word of Yahweh has exactly the same three functions. And that's the reason why Yahweh gave it at this point in time, because they need the structure on how to exist within this harsh environment called the wilderness that is currently challenging them and making them uncomfortable and making them ripe to receive the words which they are about to hear, which is a davar spoken from Mount Thorn or Mount Sinai. Now, that thorn is also something that will prick you, that will push you away from the boundary. That's what the commandments or the boundaries are all about, is to create a safe fence around the area which I will allow you to work within or to live within. And as you get close to the boundary, you'll get a prick, or there's a consequence that will push you back away from the boundary, because on the other side of the boundary is a very deep abyss where it's unsafe, where you can fall down or backslide and fall back into the darkness, the lower levels of this world. So that's the purpose of the commandments. Now, zooming back or zooming out, we now see that the commandments is part of this process in order to deal with this mixed multitude, which is a result of the promise given to Abraham, which is the sand of the sea. And we're going to look at the formation of the stars in heaven, which is the other component which has to do with the priesthood. So that's a continual thing. We'll read more about it in Leviticus and all the functions and things that they do on behalf of the people to facilitate worship, and also the relationship with Yahweh, and also to help people to maintain their spiritual strength and their relationship with Yahweh in the context of the commandments and His davar, His word that brings structure and order in their lives. Zooming out, we have the promise given to Abraham, which is basically the idea of a birthright, which was given to Isaac. Now, the birthright has to do with having the resources to look after the family. If the father passes away, you have all the resources, and then you step up in the function of the father, guiding, protecting, and leading the family and looking after them. So it's like a leader, a physical leader in the house or within the household. The other component of the birthright is the priestly function, to make sure that the faith or the culture is maintained within that family unit. And the culture is based on the Hebrew culture, because Abraham was the first Hebrew. And Hebrew is the word Ivri, that means to cross over, and regions beyond. So we cross over to regions beyond if we walk in this culture, if we adopt this culture. And what's happening at the mountain is basically an initiation into the household, accepting the culture, becoming Ivri, just like was promised to Abraham and what Abraham went through as well. The birthright existed within a family unit, which was a couple of people. And then the birthright extended to Jacob, and Jacob became a nation called Yisrael through the 12 sons, which later became the 12 tribes. Now, the family unit extended to a nation. And now we see the expansion of that, where this nation is expanding. But it's still about the birthright. But the birthright now changed slightly in what it looks like. And it's called the covenant and the commandments, which are the 10 words. So the 10 words are basically the foundation of the birthright, which will be executed or be available to those who engage and enter into the household in order to receive the structure and the cultural things within the household. Now, as with anything, people can't govern themselves. People can't be left to their own devices, especially if they are 3 months old. You can't expect someone, little baby, 3-month-old baby, to look after itself, to find its own food, and to look after itself. That little baby will die. So that's where Moshe came in. He was the mature one. He facilitates the function of the mother, to look after, to nurture, to guide, to lead, and to look after them and to protect them. And then Yahweh, through the help of Jethro, established 70 elders. And then the anointing that was on Moshe was transferred and multiplied. So Moshe was multiplied into 70 to be able to deal with the masses, or the number of people, to make it more practical. Now we see the same concept in the idea of Mashiach, Yeshua. And when he left, he said, I will give you my spirit. And the purpose of the spirit is basically similar to what we see here. The anointing of Moshe is transferred on the 70 people, 70 elders. In the same way, the anointing of Mashiach is transferred onto his Talmudim, his disciples. And they became like Mashiach, just like the 70 elders became like Moshe. And now, having the anointing or the gifts or the abilities, which are supernatural gifts given by Yahweh, upon the people or within the people, they now can fulfill the function of Moshe or the function of Mashiach within the household or body of Mashiach. And all of that is based on the foundation of these 10 words, these 10 commandments, which is the covenant and which is the birthright. And the purpose of that is to bring people into the culture of Yahweh, help them to cross over into the household, and then go through the process of elevation. And we're going to see that in one of the words we're going to look at. Elevation is what we discussed previously, the cycles of 7 that you engage with. And that has to do with the statutes, the Moedim, which Moshe explained to the people in the beginning of this parasha. So that basically wraps it up of what the importance is of the covenant, how it relates to the 10 words, why we need it, why the people need it, and especially why we need it entering into the time prior to the second coming of Mashiach, and how important that is for new babies that will be born to receive the same information that Israel received from the mountain as 3-month-old babies, as people come and cross over into the household of Yahweh in the context of the Great Tribulation and the second coming of Mashiach, so that they can be elevated and enter the household of Elohim. So I'll leave you with that as a bit of a contextual, foundational starting point for our more detailed discussion tomorrow, when we will discuss this parasha Yithro. So I hope you have a lovely day, and I will speak to you soon. Shalom.